So I've been taking a look at Claude channels from Anthropic. I mean, it looks interesting, and indeed, as others have said, it may do like 90% of what openclaw does for 90% of users, while being a lot easier to install and set up, and having way better security. And it's amazing how fast things are going these days, right? I saw when openclaw came out, it seemed super cool, and my first thought was, well, it's not going to be too long before all this functionality is just eaten up by big tech. Like, there's no super secret sauce here. Big tech just didn't do this because of security risks, but if they have to, they will figure out how to minimize this security risk and integrate openclaw type functionality in their offerings. Obviously, OpenAI had that in mind. That's why they hired the openclaw creator. But what we see now, Anthropic, boom, like beat them to the punch, and they actually rolled out something fairly openclaw like Claude channels, integrated nicely with Claude Desktop, Claude Code. I mean, all good. Now, does it worry me regarding Metaclaw and Hyperclaw, the new offerings that we're creating in SingularityNet and ASI Alliance using our Hyperon framework and our meta programming language? I mean, not really. I mean, I knew big tech was going to do this. I didn't know they were going to do it as fast as Anthropic has. So kudos to Anthropic. I mean, they're a great company in many ways, but there's a bunch of differentiators and advantages that we can have with a Hyperclaw, Metaclaw sort of offering. And let me start with the simpler and less critical ones. I mean, one is it's open source, right? And that means anyone can play with it. So it can be a playground for adding cool new features. And big tech may assimilate some of those features. They may not assimilate other of those features. But I mean, open source often is more advanced than proprietary stuff, as we see from openclaw itself, getting there first before big tech copied them. I mean, and another advantage is data sovereignty and data privacy, right? And right now, more people talk about that than really care about it in practice, but it's hard to see how things will evolve, right? I mean, the US arguably is slipping further and further toward authoritarianism, and it's clear how big tech is working closely with the government. I mean, Anthropic, arguably not as much as some other big techs, but the pattern is still there, right? And I know as things get more and more authoritarian, it may seem more and more sensible to more people, like, hold on, all my private data going into big tech, I mean, could this at some point be used against me by the government, right? Now, if you use openclaw or Hyperclaw with Claude or GPT on the back end, you're not escaping from that. If you use these with open source models hosted on ASI Cloud, then you are bypassing that, right? So another point is their application areas like DeFi, which Anthropic, Gemini, GPT are not going to pay that much attention to, right? Because they're in some ways maybe legally gray area, although less so due to Trump legitimating, at least in the US, crypto, and they're just not what big tech wants to think about. So I mean, we could customize a Hyperclaw for DeFi and make it easier to use in the crypto ecosystem than big tech is going to do. And this makes a lot of sense for SingularityNet, can tie in with our ASI chain launch and so forth. But let me get to the main point, which is intelligence, right? I mean, I've said for a while that only way really that decentralized AI wins, the only way really that OpenAI, actually OpenAI, not the closed source company called OpenAI, the only way that open and decentralized AI wins in the end is if it's smarter in a practically useful way than big tech AI. And I think that's the same thing with the hyperclaw, right? I mean, we can be open, we can be DeFi friendly, we can respect data sovereignty. All those are good, and all those can get users and be viable. What really will matter is when our claw is smarter than the big tech claws, right? And this is where the basic premise that we started, metaclaw / hyperclaw with, this is where it pays off, right? Because the whole point is we're using Meta, which is an AGI programming language, and also the smart contract language of our ASI chain blockchain. The whole point is we're using that at the foundation of the claw agent, right? And that means if we want to integrate reasoning using logic engines alongside LLMs, if we want to integrate various sorts of long-term declarative and episodic memory and working memory, we want to put more and more cognitive stuff in there. It's very straightforward to integrate it deeply with the metaclaw core. So like in openclaw, if you want to have a skill that chains together other skills in a certain way, you'll hard code that in the Python for the skill, or you hard code it in the Markdown file for the skill, and that's fine. Claude is not that stupid at reasoning about it, right? But on the other hand, in metaclaw, this sort of multi-skill orchestration is coded in explicit logic that can then get reasoned on by a logic engine, coded in Meta, working closely with the Meta core. And, this isn't immediate magic, but I think it gives a lot more interesting possibilities going forward. And yeah, this is why, I see Claude channels as pretty dangerous for openclaw and many of the other claw systems coming out, but pretty positive and interesting for what we're doing with the metaclaw hyperclaw system in SingularityNet, because in the end, what we're doing has a lot of other aspects, but the core thing is building a platform for moving toward general intelligence, right? And the reason I'm psyched about this claw stuff, it's not just that it's a trend we can jump on, though. No, that's not terrible, but it's that I can see this claw functionality, simple as it is. It's very powerful for AGI. We can use metaclaw as the core cognitive controller for a Hyperon system on one machine and multiple machines. We can also use it as the centerpiece of a sort of broader decentralized network, pulling together stuff from Fetch Agentverse, from SingularityNet, from ASI Chain, from around the whole internet, and having this single sort of control functionality, very flexible adaptive control functionality, span the sort of control an individual Hyperon mind aspect and focus the global brain on your particular needs aspect. It's quite interesting how the claw methodology brings together different aspects of AGI, from the more focused and the more sort of sprawling and emergent. So, and if more and more people start using Claude channels or other similar offerings by big tech, this means more and more people will get used to highly functional agents, and they'll be even more psyched about our even more highly functional agent that we roll out. The first release, HyperClaw, is going to be, as you can see, we've been debating the names, MetaClaw versus HyperClaw. Today it looks like it may be HyperClaw. The more users you get for these big tech products, the more users will get who are hungry for, a claw agent that's even smarter, right? And that's what we're aiming to provide. The first release is going to be a developer release. It's already interesting. Then we're going to bleed out more and more, even more interesting updates step by step. And we want to invite the community into doing this, right? I mean, historically, Hyperon and SingularityNet have been open source, and we've had a modest developer community. But I'm thinking that omegaclaw can be where we transition into getting a really sizable, really active open source developer community who's playing an integral role in sort of blasting the thing forward and moving very rapidly to having superior functionality to big text channels and other claw-like offerings, as well as other open things like openclaw. All right. To infinity and beyond.